in the very local context. So there was a group of researchers who talked about what's happening in India, and there are a group of researchers who talked about what's happening in Bangladesh. So that's second is that what is the perception, response, and policies? Very wide array of areas, both history, poetry, literature, sociology, and economy. Very interesting, rich, and stimulating keynote speech by our distinguished keynote speaker, and that triggered a lot of interesting ideas. And then it moved on to the whole issue of culture civilization aspects, both in terms of connectivity and culture. What I noticed that there was a very constructive thread running around all the presentations. There wasn't a kind of an acrimonious us and then game, which normally happens when we have river and water discussed between even the academicians between the two groups. So that's the broad issues. There were one or two papers which looked at the transboundary issue. Tista came in, and also some of the other transboundary, but more as a laying down the facts. What is the status, rather than going into the governance and management issue. So now the responsibility is with us as to look at what next, what that we could do together, hopefully, to take the whole issue forward in a constructive manner. Having said this, I have shared with my panelists certain questions, but let me give you a quick frame as to what that we want to pursue. We will continue to take a constructive kind of a mindset, not us and them, not blaming each other, but looking at that what is the reality, do a quick reality check, and then move forward. Now, coming from an area where there's little water and more diplomacy, I thought that how a diplomat would possibly look at some of the issues related to the rivers and the waters. And I realized that this is a extremely sensitive political issue when it comes to transboundary rivers. So that's first frame. I think, and Professor Imtiaz will sort of may agree that it is also a geopolitical issue. It's highly charged political issue. It's possibly the political issue, especially when it comes to in the regional level, even between Bangladesh and India, given the best of the best relationship we are having. So that's the second pointer in terms of understanding. It is also becoming a very security issue, which, looking back, wasn't very prominent, but lately I see, especially with 𝒊𝒏𝒄𝒄𝒄𝒄 famous, the next battle in Asia would be over water, that continue to haunt policymakers. That if he has said it, why he has said it, and then others picked it up. Lately, I was looking at a diplomatic magazine and see that debate, that whether it will be weaponized with the involvement of China or not. And I see that because I partly split my time between here and Delhi, and I see a lot of discussions at the academician level on the Brahmaputra issues. So that's there. And when policymakers think about it, they also keep that in mind. So that's the other pointer. And the last is that what's that available, both in the region, bilaterally, and what that we could do. And in the whole debate, naturally, India being aspiring power and being very important geographically, both in terms of water and politics, continue to play a dominant role in the evolving governance system. So the point is that as to how it would like to bring about a substantive change the way Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas So how do you do the vikas if you don't take into consideration of many things? Now, so having these 3-4 pointers, I thought my kind of a take would be that can we effectively build a connected, collaborative Northeast Bay of Bengal, Bangladesh, that being talked about, a new corridor, unless you bring in 2 issues. One, I'm not going to dwell today on, is the mobility and migration issue. The other one is the whole water and river issue. If we do not actually bring that into the debate, can we really build a seamless corridor of prosperity, starting from Himalayas down the hill and then Bay of Bengal? So that's the hypothesis. So we will seek your kind of advice to, if that is so, then what next? What that we need to do? So next time when we meet, rather than talking about the same problematics, we talk about how to move forward. Whether the policymaker will take it or not, it's up to them. So as I said, that I have a very distinguished panelists. So I'll start off with Professor Imtiaz. Professor Imtiaz, as you know, that he possibly doesn't need a sort of a statement qualifying as to how a competent expert Professor Imtiaz is, not only in the geopolitical field, state relation, foreign policy, but also in the field of water resources. He has extensively written on these areas, spoken in these areas, and he has his own way of looking at it. So from you, maybe the participant would like to know, what is the state of governance when it comes to the water? Simple question, but, and then once you are, then I have a very, because I'm in the academic world now.
Right.
It's no longer in the blah blah business. So I'll say that, then I will throw you a question in terms of what could be the structure of intellectual exercise. So over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Shidroth. Distinguished guests, my co-panelists and friends, I'm sure students are also there. When it comes to state of water governance, and I understand we are talking about water governance, right? In
River governance,
or river.
Right.
I think a couple of things I've written on it, but let me flag so that we can have a good discussion. One of the critical issues is, of course, our mindset. Our mindset is very land-centric, and that has been for years. Somehow, we say, even in the case of Bangladesh, we do refer to Bangladesh as Nodi Matrik Desh, water-centric country, but Nodi Matrik Desh is no longer there. It's more land-centric. If you look at the engineering, if you look at the cities, they're all water, land-centric. It's no longer water-centric. It used to be water-centric at one point of time, but it is no longer there. That has been a serious issue. Way back in 1997, myself and then we had Ashish Nandi, the psychologist, and 𝒊𝒗𝒆𝒓𝒔, the Nepali hydrologist. 3 of us got together to write the South Asian Water Manifesto. But you can see it's more than quarter century ago, and nothing has happened. And even in that South Asian Manifesto, we pointed out about transforming this land-centric understanding of water and rivers, particularly land-centric understanding into water-centric. But that has not happened. The only thing I see, and I'm familiar with 𝒊𝒂's work, that there are people who have moved into what I would refer to as post-disciplinary approach to rivers. That I think is something interesting. And then again, 𝒊𝒂 comes from historian. As a historian, I think he has a different way of looking at it. But I haven't seen core engineers and core hydrologists doing that. There are some exceptions, and I'll refer to some of the exceptions, but bulk of engineers, bulk of hydrologists still a very land-centric understanding of water engineering, if I can use the word. So I've written on it, but just to flag, we need to ask questions as to what we mean by water to begin with. And we have a serious problem in that people have an understanding that it's only hydrogen plus oxygen, whereas myself and 𝒂𝒑𝒉 Dixit thought, no, there has to be P4, H2O, P4, power, politics, profit, and pollution. Without that, you can't have a social science understanding of water. But more importantly, the concept of river has been very problematic in South Asia and in the world, I think. If you look at a river and its time, I think we should change that word into Nodi and not use the word river. Because river, if you look at the etymology, it really doesn't even mean water, in fact. It means water, where the water arrives. And that has been a serious problem. Nodi, on the other hand, is much older concept than river. You get it as early as in the 𝒔𝒊𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒄 Upanishad, and it makes the clear understanding of Nodi is that it's a blood vessel where you need to have three things: Atta, Pran, and Shakti. And it's way back. If you can. Anybody knowing about Upanishad would know it's 1,000 years back. We had an interesting understanding of Nodi or river as Atta, Pran, and Shakti. And this, got in a more scientific language. We have Jayanta Bandhopadhyay, a hydrologist. I'm sure some of you have read his work. And by reading his work, I tried to frame it into webs that any Nodi or any river will have four things: water, energy, biodiversity, and sediment. You cannot call a river unless you have water, energy, biodiversity, sediment. Now, when it comes to transboundary river, the problem transboundary is, dialogue and negotiation. We talk about sharing the water, but we never talk about sharing the energy, biodiversity, and sediment. That's the problem. And nobody talks about, what sediment will be there. Forget the biodiversity, even word. Nobody talks about sharing biodiversity. It's almost like the fish should understand, when a river is cut into half. Now, that kind of understanding has to transform unless you mainstream that, unless you make river Nodi and make Nodi as Atta, Pran, and Shakti and make Nodi as webs. We are not going to, I don't think, the discussion we can continue as we have been doing that for over a quarter century, but I don't think you can change things as quickly. So I still think the intellectual content is a critical part where governance has not moved because it has been very land-centric, or mindset has been very land-centric. And unless there is a, kind of serious intellectual input, I'm afraid we are not going to go far. So I'll stop here and wait for other questions.
Thank you very much. Maybe we should start thinking, should it be a river conference or a Nodi conference next time? Although there is a Nodi initiative, NADI, the whole Asian conference one. But certainly there are ways that we can differ. Very interesting kind of way of looking at Nodi. Very different than so far we have been listening to you. Now, since we are into the governance questions, whether it is a national level governance, regional level governance, or international level governance, we always try and look at what is the fundamentals, what is the basis, what is the theoretical assumptions on which we can then build on processes, institutions, and the rest of it. Now, I have a very limited kind of an understanding, but I picked up that there are four doctrines when it comes to river water issues. One is the absolute sovereignty, and the other one is territorial integrity or natural water flow. and then historical use, and then equitable distribution and equitable utilizations. Now, given the context of Bangladesh and India, which one, or more than one, or something new, that could be the basis of building the governance structure?
Okay, the first thing we have to keep in mind that when it comes to transboundary river, it's part of geopolitics, or everything is political. You know, there's nothing beyond politics. One can very quickly quote Anthony Gramsci for that matter. Everything is political, even philosophy or philosophies, and the only philosophy is history in action. That is life itself, quote unquote Gramsci. So given the fact that when two countries meet, it is political. Now, the problem is our understanding of things has been over the years influenced by theory of scarcity rather than theory of abundance. That's a serious problem. Now, when I say theory of scarcity, of course, the discipline of economics has prevailed for over a century, I believe. It was not the case earlier, in fact. If you look at the history of economics, you will see it was understood in very different ways. But for last 100 years or so, we are more into an hegemonic understanding of what I would refer to as scarcity. Everybody is looking into scarcity. Now, the word scarcity is problematic from the standpoint of psychology, because the moment you talk of scarcity, there is fear in it. Now, moment you talk of fear, and here why the realists prevail, you know, people will say, oh, realist, he is a realist diplomat, or is a realist IR. The whole theory of realism is based on fear, because what it means that you are insecure, and that's the reason you need all these weapons and all these cars. Now, that's the understanding that has prevailed. Now, how do you counter that? How do you overcome? It's not an easy task unless you make an effort of doing it. Because if you look at only scarcity, you will come up with fear, you will come up with realism, you will come up with weapons and securitization and all those things. But if you look at abundance, and this is the interesting part, and the chair was pointing out little water and more diplomacy. I thought it is more other ways. It's more water we have, but little diplomacy. so we actually have more water. It's abundance, particularly in Bangladesh. And keep in mind, bulk of the water that we have in our rivers, over 80% is actually rainwater. Only 16 to 18% comes from 𝑦𝒂𝒐𝒊𝒏𝒆𝒄𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈 in the context of Brahmaputra or from the Himalayas. That 16 to 18% is important. I'm not trying to minimize, or they are equally important, but 80% of our water is rainwater, and that's why we are blessed. I've written one that gold is falling from the sky. Gold drops falling from the sky. It's actually gold, but we haven't actually got into a discipline which focuses on abundance. We are all into scarcity, and that is where I think we are stuck. So it's before we go into the point of what a Delhi diplomat or a Delhi practitioner and a Bangladeshi practitioner would think. The first thing is that are we into abundance or are we into scarcity? If it is abundance, I think we can frame in a much more fruitful way as to what can be done. And there are good examples of countries of doing it. And one good example is European Union. Why Germany and France, who fought 3 great wars. They call it World War, but it's all European war. Napoleonic War, First World War, Second World War, killing millions of people. Highest number of people that humans have ever killed is in Europe. 66 million people got killed in 11 years. That means every year 11 million was killed. That's huge. And of course, you have the genocide and all those things. But look how they have transformed. If you go in France and Germany now, what they have done after Second World War, after all this, they suddenly thought, no, let's focus on abundance. And what they had in abundance was coal and steel. That's where the France and Germany started building themselves. And that's the reason why Britain could not do much, because when Britain joined the European Union, they actually joined from the standpoint of scarcity, not from the standpoint of abundance. So France and Germany prevailed because they thought, let's focus on abundance. And once you start focusing, and those who are here, those who are understanding constructivism would know, if you start cooperating, your habit becomes more of cooperation, then you build on it.
Does it mean that we have lots of water and rivers and that's why we start building rather than?
The possibility of Bangladesh and India here comes in a big way because there is abundance of water, only that we have yet to manage what you call the dry season. And the problem is our mindset is very different. And I can focus on Tista and tell you the serious problem why we have Tista issue is that you don't want to bring Sikkim in the whole thing. But when it comes to there is water. So what I'm saying is that if you can start building on abundance and building on cooperation, then slowly you can change the things. But we are yet to get into that phase of transforming from scarcity to abundance in the first place.
Thank you. We'll come back to you, sir. Let me now move to Director Farah Kabir, Country Director of Action Aid. Director Farah has been very active in the field of actually implementing projects, initiatives, movements centering around both river, water, and climate change, not only in the context of India, Bangladesh, or South Asia, going beyond South Asia. She has that experience. So my question is that so far we see that when it comes to river and water issues, we try and sort of manage ourselves within the country. And there's a number of reasons. We are not going to go that why is this perception, why is not the European outlook rather than a very South Asian outlook. What your experience suggests in that particular area, that why these countries having a history of collaborations, only 70 years of separation, partition, why they can't think jointly without ending up in a fight, even at the civil society level. And why this? Let's start with that and then we'll see what we could do. Thank you.
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. And as you say, why? That why led us to try and dive deeper. And as part of the civil society, we thought that we should have a conversation about commons. So the river or water as a common resource, because often the understanding was that it belonged to the state or the government, or it was a private resource. So the people and that there is a common claim to it was not there. And from Action Aid, we started working across South Asia to develop this understanding of what we call water commons. And as already mentioned by Professor Imtiaz, that there is the tendency of coming up with engineering solutions when there is lack of water, and also when there is overflow of water. And that was not working for the communities. Technical engineering solutions were being very problematic. I've just come back yesterday night from Rajshahi, and we had a convention there on drought and Barin track, and the conversations were that the three rivers around it has not been what shall we say, not managed but governed or used to support the Barin region. And there's rather scarcity and lots of issues. And I just want to contest what Professor Imtiaz said about there being an abundance. That used to be true until we realized how we had impacted on climate and the extreme climatic weather. And if those who study the rain patterns, our systems, river And this has been the hottest year. And many countries have faced or are facing lack of rain. So if what we had as a resource, which was the rain, that is not with us to the extent that we took it for granted. So that is one thing. And then the world has seen an explosion of its populations over the last 22 decades or so on, or 3 decades. And in my own country, the surface water, the groundwater, both are being depleted. And this is, from every place that we go to. Part of it is because of engineering. Because if you go to some of these areas, you'll find that there are deep tube wells, which numbers are less, but the semi-deep tube wells are in thousands, and they have extracted the water. So this is a problem that is true for us, and I think it's a problem for many parts of South Asia. So you have already an inherent problem of not understanding the river, not understanding its movement and trying to control and govern, manage it. So that was a problem. And then you have an additional issue of the climate change and erratic extreme weather. So this is where we are. And the civil society has been, as you said, that it's all about being politics. And the civil society in each of South Asian countries are nationalistic. And we forget that over-nationalism or extreme nationalism border on the lines of fascism and not in the interest of the community, definitely not in the interest of women and marginalized. So we have all been a part of this upbringing, this induction, and that's how our mindset. So it's not just a land-centric mindset about the South Asian civil society. However, we did manage on many occasions to come together for the greater interest, for common interest. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you very much. I have a follow-up question. Interesting that, and rightly so, that you have brought the issue of common resources. Now, when it comes to the river and water, and if you look at the broader global debate, you'll see that as opposed to the global debate, in our part of the world, we don't sort of recognize river and water either as a public good or a private good.
Yeah, private by default.
Okay. Now, there's an international kind of a trend. The time has come when we should try and get these things also valued, priced, demand and supply in terms of market forces. This could be one of the way that some of the Western world tried and solved their water issues, and rightly so, including UK. So, do you think that's an alternative? If I wouldn't say, I'll not make a value judgment saying there's a better way, but is that something? At least the trend has already started, where you are paying for your water, which we didn't when we were young. We didn't see that happening. So, is that something also we should be looking at? Or we should move away from it?
See, putting a price tag to water may have been from the understanding that we should value our resources. But I don't think under the neoliberal capitalistic world that was the agenda. The agenda was definitely making profit. And when that is the agenda, in the most difficult of times, like if I was in Cox's Bazar just after the day after Mocha, and we are known for, I'm diverting just a little bit, digressing a little bit. We are known for our early warning, and we are cited as an example. So in the camps and outside the camps in Cox's Bazar, people, the most vulnerable people, will move to the shelter. But the shelter has one water reservoir. And when you're moving 1,000 people or over 1,000 people, that reservoir of water lasted only for a few hours. And by late night, early morning, people had to go out and buy water. So how is that helping as a common resource? So it is more about profiteering. And in fact, it is not actually supporting those in most need. And those of us who can afford to buy water, we waste water. So the purpose or the intent of having a pricing or letting the market force play, I don't think that has served for common good.
Thank you. I'll try and see how we try and wrap up on the whole issue of profit making and not profit making
And
issues.
this is not just a national issue.
I'll just leave one thought to dwell on, which is interest versus value. These kind of an international structure either stands on interest or on values, or mixed of both. And that debate is coming out very strongly. Is that can we have a bilateral relation only based on interests, not on values, and vice versa? So if you get that frame into the water and river issue, how that will feature out. India-Bangladesh relationship in the case of a river and water would not only based on values, but also based on interest, depending on who comes from which sea. And so far, Bangladesh has been looking at in terms of values, rights, entitlements, and India has been looking at in terms of interests, both national and international. So we'll see how we can have a convergence, or is it irreconcilable. I have the distinguished colleague from India, Dr. 𝒊𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈. Welcome. We have heard you very loudly yesterday. I would sort of try and get a thread out of your presentation. Yesterday, if I missed your first half, but when I could pick up your thread and looked at your presentation, you said that, I don't know, please correct me if I'm wrong. You said that instead of governance, we should be looking at management. That raises very fundamental question. Should we be looking for management? Oh, you manage water-river relation between Bangladesh. You don't govern it. Now, I have a very strong reservation, which I always had, even as a civil servant. There is a tendency of aspiring power to put things into a more kind of a non-rights, non-ethical management style, 𝒔𝒊𝒂𝒏 style management. As opposed to that smaller nation wants, no, there should be a strong value attached to norm practices attached to anything. So that's why the developing countries always moved away from the management architecture to the governance architecture. But you were trying to put a different rationale. We'd like to know from you as to where from you're coming at this stage, when there's a strong search for a rights-centric kind of relations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will answer your question, but that would be in a minute time. Before that, let me kind of present before this audience some of the ideas which I have in my mind, which could probably make you all think, and we will all think together for better river governance, connecting ecology and people. First of all, I think that there must be an awareness building. And in the sense, I am reminded of Bankim-Chandra Chattopadhyay's novels, and where, in order to create a kind of awareness about how to, people will fight for independence, they were arguing that, you have to transform your motherland, that is Ma, from Mrinmoy to Chinmoy, which means that you have to give a kind of a flesh and blood kind of idea to something abstract, the motherland. So here, as Professor Ahmed started about Nodi as Ma, Nodi Matri. So we have to create an awareness that it's not just a flow, it's not just water flowing, but it has its own kind of values, which is very important for our own daily existence. So this number one is kind of, we have to attempt for this awareness building, number one. Number two, so when we, in diplomatic front, we discuss about policies, but the basis of policy is some kind of information. And the information that the government have or the diplomats have, from where they acquire those information? Are they coming directly from people, or are they coming from bureaucrats, from some secondary sources? So my first half of presentation yesterday was arguing that we must have information directly from the people who are residing on the banks of those rivers, what they think, what they feel, what is their approach to the river or the water that is flowing by their side. So, and I fleshed out an idea of surveying and survey data from that field. The third important issue which also came up from yesterday's presentations was a distinction between micro, meso, and macro. The more we better manage our own river resources within the country. Yesterday, many small rivers were discussed, both in India and in Bangladesh. So the better we manage, the better we see that it is not polluted, are not being given there, we have a more better voice to argue at the sub-regional level, that we have this model of better managing our own tiny rivers, and so that model maybe can be given at the meso level, and then probably at the regional level, the macro level. So this kind of idea can also, and how. So my idea would be, and sir, you are here, you have been a diplomat, career diplomat. So can we, we have our own networks. So can we create some small task force on these rivers? Maybe some NGOs may be invited, our own networks may be used, universities. So all these rivers must have we must have a data bank. And that must come from, you cannot have a data bank without survey, without discussing, without field level visits. So I think a small task force on all these rivers that are there in South Asia, maybe it would be a huge task, but that network is also very important. Another very important issue is that whether we think of river as natural resource or national resource. It is a natural resource, prakritik sampad. But we think that it's a national resource, and thereby the interest, national security, all these dimensions come in. So we have to fundamentally alter at the diplomatic level also this kind of attitude. And from there, I will just come up to this kind of idea that the philosophy, the value that we were talking about, this value orientation should be based on right to live, not right to life. Right to live means you give importance to the people. You give importance to the public who are situated at the banks of the river, who get something or who are not getting anything from the existence of the river. Earlier, maybe they used to get something. Now the rivers are, the rivers are not good enough. Good flow is not there. So they are not getting anything. So the right to live is the new philosophy of justice, that kind of thing. And there you are talking about trade, earlier even in literature and all, we have seen that these rivers are a very good carrier of trade. Now we are not using that much as trade zone, sea lanes of communication as trade zones. So that can be an important idea, that we must utilize these resources to create a kind of identity. South Asian SAARC has failed as a political forum, but can we not have as Madam was telling, to locate at these regional commons, because it's necessity, the theory of necessity, our existential necessity is to protect and promote these rivers, and kind of maybe we could have a trade zone through river. That idea could come up. And last but not the least, I have read this word from Professor Ahmed's book on state and foreign policy, India and South Asia, way back in '93. Althusser's concept of assemblage, and assemblage would mean that transformation is not an effect but a continuous process. So you don't have a policy which will overnight transform everything, but it's a continuous process. And this continuous process also have two types. One is the technocratic, the mechanical assemblage, and another is a collective assemblage. So I think we must all collectively come together, think, discuss, and bring people, give more importance to the public rather than on national resource. We think river must be seen as a natural resource, not as national resource. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, just take a minute, because why I use the word managing, because see, governance is a term which is led by World Bank, which has its own kind of philosophical problem, and it has its own technical dimension. It means network between various stakeholders. Stakeholders have their own interests, and if interests come in discussions, then it would be problematic. But management, it would have a very balanced approach towards solving the problem. That's why I used it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm wondering, Professor Dr. Chattopadhyay, right to life encompasses right to live. So it's why are you coming up with this distinction between right to, because what I heard from you was human centric, but those of us who are talking about right to life for the rivers includes rivers first as an entity, and then also things about humanity, because one of the problems has always been that it's been human driven, human interest driven, not based on the interest of the rivers or biodiversity or ecology. So this is something it might help to clarify, because it's very clearly in the Human Rights Declaration or any constitutional right to life means right to live.
Dr. Pradeep, can we keep it for the concluding? Thank you very much. I see your rationale of bringing in management rather than governance, and also see that when you say manage, it's basically grassroots voice of the people that you want to participatory approach that you want to bring in. Thank you very much. We'll come back, because we will have to have a kind of a discussion on the whole architecture as to how we move forward. So we'll come back. But at this stage, I would like to open the floor. We have a little bit of a time constraint. So what we'll do, we'll take a couple of questions, 3, 4, and we'll come back to the panel and then try and wrap it up. Is that all right? Please. And please be brief, to the point. And if you want to sort of this particular person, please say so, or otherwise you leave it to the panel to pick and choose.
Yeah.
Then we can have as many questions as possible.
I've got a small question to the Professor 𝒔𝒊𝒏𝒆𝒄𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈. Around 3-4 years back, there was a water diplomacy training under the supervision of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I participated in there. So my observation is that water diplomacy in this region has become a taboo. I've been in the National River Conservation Commission for 5 years. I've not heard about it. No government sunbed, no academician, no political leader talk about the water diplomacy. And for 10 years, a Joint River Commission does not convene. But water is a very big problem, but no one is talking. So where we are heading, and how can we
clear? So we have one question. We'll come back. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my question is to Professor 𝒔𝒊𝒏𝒆𝒄𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈. Okay, so I was reading this article by Professor Garrett Hardin, the tragedy of commons. Okay, so it starts with the like unrelated theme, but we can employ it in this situation as well. The population problem has no technical solution. It requires a fundamental extension in morality. Okay. So then I was thinking about like, what if like Aristotle and Nietzsche were to debate about this issue? Okay, so Aristotle would say that we have to find a correct answer to this question. Okay, but Nietzsche would say that maybe we are looking at it from wrong angle. Okay, maybe we need to find the appropriate question first. Okay, before like looking for an answer. Okay, so my question in this situation is like, I'm also like doing my doctoral thesis on transboundary governance. Okay, so shouldn't we find the real stakeholders first, at first? Okay, in the backdrop of ecocentric rise of ecocentrism, where like anthropocentrism has been like heavily criticized. So in that sense, what would be what would you like to suggest?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the question, yes, please.
I want to add to the question from an engineer's perspective. I'm hearing lots of discussion on the diplomacy side, but when we look at the causes and when we look at some of the challenges, it comes from poor long-term thinking or short-term solutions. So one request would be, when you are thinking about a consortium or discussion, to bring in different voices. And I think the engineering sector or the development sector will be one stakeholder that's often missed out, because there are strong discussions. I have been from a river conferences from a bridge sector, but that is totally disconnected from this one. So I think there is one interesting and important discussion along with community voices. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I know diplomats are quite capable of isolating others. So I take your point, and certainly we'll come back when it comes to. Can we go at the back? Any question from our students? Anything? Okay.
Sir, my question is for Srinivasan, sir. Sir, you told about the trade zone around the rivers. For developing the trade zone around the rivers, it is required a continuous transportation around the river. If you make blockade on the river's continuous flow, as like the Farakka Dam, can you make the river navigable, ensure the continuous navigation, and can you develop the trade zone around the river if you make blockade? Thank you.
Good. Anyone else? Yes.
Okay, I am Dr.
Take two more questions.
I am Dr. Shafidur Islam from Brunei Darussalam University. So I have some observations from the audience. They mentioned awareness builder. Why not the engagement of the ℇ population? That should be the vital point in any type of resource management or water sharing solutions. This is one point I would like to ask from the audience. What should be the answer for ℇ people engagement? And another thing, we are talking this joint commission, river commission. As I inform only the Bangladesh and India, we can get river commission something. So why not think about this common river commissions, like a Rhine River, the European commissions. This is 10 countries are involved. Proper solution they are finding from the one platform. Why we have not this JVM river commissions in this region, South Asian Asia? And similarly, even the Southeast Asia, I think Sir Imtiaz, Professor Imtiaz, we talk about this in Brunei. I can remember this similar issue. Why like a Mekong River commissions? They are working huge tremendous development for the last 20 years. Even Rhine Europe, we already all solution there.
Thank you.
Solution.
Thank you. We will
Why we
try and
have
bring,
no this type of
we'll try and bring that issue in.
Okay, this is my only observation.
Thank you. I'm looking for young students, not the Burai students.
Mr. Chair, can I speak on behalf of the students?
Just a minute, sir. Just a minute, sir. I'll give you the floor. Can we? I know. Can we go at the back? Ask question. Water and river is your future. No?
এখানে যারা আছে কয়জন নদীর কাছাকাছি থাকেন? আপনি থাকেন কোন নদী? তিতাস নদী নিয়ে আপনার চিন্তা ভাবনা কি? সরি, আমি চেয়ার মডেল। তিতাস নদী নিয়ে আপনি কি কোনো চিন্তিত? রাতে ঘুম হয়? কোনো সমস্যা নাই তিতাস নদীতে?
তিতাস একটি নদীর নাম।
হ্যাঁ, সিনেমা দেখছেন?
বাংলাতেই বলতে পারবে, বাংলাই বলো দেখি।
হ্যাঁ, আপনার কাছে কি মনে হয় যে তিতাস বা অন্য নদী নিয়ে কি কোনো প্রশ্ন আছে? এই সুযোগটা হারাবেন না। আচ্ছা, উনি এখনো ফর্ম করে নাই। আর কেউ? নদী ভ্রমণ যেতে ভালো লাগে? তো নদী না থাকলে কি হবে? বাংলাদেশে কয়টা নদী আছে? আচ্ছা, যাই হোক।
Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The title of this session is Policy Colloquium, River Governance. Basically, it comes to water governance as well. So in water governance, the main question is who gets what water, when and how. I visited the Buriganga River before COVID, and I was surprised. I'm not a physician, but if I were a cardiologist, I would have said that the blockage is so much that just a ring is not enough. Open heart surgery is required. So please tell us how we can survive and these rivers which are surrounding our Dhaka city. Forget about other rivers. Unbelievable where we stand right now. This whole discussion should come
Absolutely.
to indeed some
Absolutely.
policy.
The whole issue of
Thank you very much.
pollution. There was also a very interesting bunch of papers on the whole issue of pollution and the other thing. I mean, it was a well-spent 1.5 days. So if there is no burning questions, then we would come back to the panelists. There's interesting kind of questions. Before I do that, I have a question. That is to our distinguished keynote speaker. That when I was preparing for this particular session, I thought why we didn't, those who organized, bring in both the water and the river together. Now, I had two thoughts. One is that internationally currently, there is a kind of a tension between the water lobbyist and the river lobbyist. Developed countries do not want to bring the two together, not even in the SDGs frame. Was that the reason? Or we haven't graduated to a level where we bring in both the river and the water together to create a new architecture of governance? Sir, you start thinking. We'll come back towards the end because I'm thought of both the soft and hard architecture. But before that, let me come back to Professor Imtiaz, and then Farapa is saying you answer all the questions.
Thank you. Why we don't have much with water diplomacy? That's understandable because, as I said, we haven't built, particularly in the context of South Asia, except for India and Bangladesh. I think somehow from 2008 onwards or 2009 onwards, we have built a relationship with India where we can, if you are a constructivist, you can start thinking of building into a greater cooperation because there has been some cooperation on different fields and the trust is increasing. But just think about Bangladesh, India and Pakistan. It's absolutely on they can only reproduce conflicts. They can never, reproduce what you call cooperation. So in order for cooperation if you want to upgrade it, you need cooperation and continuously. So I guess that would be one part of answer, but the other part would be more philosophical. And let me flag that also. I think understanding of diplomacy has also been very limiting, we are all Western trained. We don't use our South Asian indigenous word, which is kutniti. Now, Professor Shahidul Haq now stays in Delhi. He would know the diplomatic enclave is called Chanakopuri, named after Chanakya Kautilla. Now, kutniti is a word which actually refers back to Kautilla. Kut, Kutila, Kautillo. Kut can also have a very, negative, never interesting word, Kutnami. I'm sure all of you, we all practice Kutnami, in our life. And that also is the name of Kautilla, actually. In the name of Kautilla is Kutnami. Now, but more importantly and seriously, Chanakya was giving an abstraction of how to do diplomacy or how to do kutnati, in 4th century BC by his reference to the concept called mandala. He used this mandala concept, the circle of space. People thought it was circle of state. There was no state at that particular time. So it's a circle of space, one space after another, one circle after another. That is what Kutniti is all about. You don't create just geo to geo relationship. You create X number of circles, and not only on the issue of economics, but on politics, on culture, on history, and psychology. You go on and on and on. Somehow that has not been practiced. So the reason why I think it's limiting as we talk is like we need a serious brainstorming on that. The second question on the, whether we go for Aristotle or Nietzsche, no, I would think that you go for Rabindranath Tagore, you go for, Rabindranath has written a lot and has been well versed on water issues. His famous poem, as you know, is on water. So why I'm saying that there was an interesting debate between Tagore and Einstein in 1930. And the debate, Einstein literally had to surrender at one point in time. And the debate was on a very simple question, whether there can be, beauty or truth or table, and by implication, the moon without human beings. And Rabindranath answered no, without human beings, no table, no moon, no truth, no. And finally, Einstein understood beauty, because you can't have, a cow. We don't know how cow looks at us, and does not, whether a cow is telling other cow by twice hamba that you're beautiful. We really don't know. So, but humans can know what beautiful is all about. So even on the truth, as you know, only humans can, truth is realized through human. So in order for this whole issues of centrality as to water and river, it has to be humans. Because without humans, there's no rivers. Without humans, there's no water. And that's the reason I always point out, humans create geopolitics. Geopolitics does not create humans. The reason why Bangladesh is now geopolitically important is because Bangladeshis have made a difference in last 2 decades or so, with the growth and all, we have a little bit of honey. And if you can build more honey, it will become more geopolitically important. If there's no honey, it will remain. Geographically, it was always there, but, and it was geopolitically important in the 18th century. People forget. We have just taken a project on that to look into earlier geopolitics. In 18th century, Bengal was a big thing. And it was geopolitically serious, very important. So my argument would be, you not focus on Nietzsche, not focus on Aristotle, get out of the Western paradigm. I would probably tell you, go for Nietzsche rather than Aristotle, but I still think you have Rabindranath, much more qualified theoretician and philosopher. On the point of, I think there was a little bit on the Joint River Commission, and well, Mekong River Commission is a good one. 4 countries, and then you have +2. Don't forget, China and Myanmar, both are upper riparian in relation to the other 4 countries joined in, and they made a difference. I had an opportunity to go there to Laos, looked into, traveled to Kampuchea, and then crossed all the way to other countries to see how the Mekong River Commission works. I think we need to learn from them, and there's no reason why we can't do that. But our mindset is still, there's a possibility of Bangladesh and India doing it a little bit earlier. But look at the relationship between Nepal and India. Boom. It goes up and down. It's jumping. My Indian friends probably would be able to tell more. But my Nepali friends are always, said, oh, no. We had enough of Delhi. So it's not in a good form. Here, the concept of rights has to be, I think, critically looked into. There are 3 layers when we say rights. You see, one is river rights. The river ought to have rights. But when it comes to human, you need to be very careful because, and it goes back to Mahatma Gandhi's, remark to H.G. Wells' first draft on the Charter of Human Rights. The first drafting was done by H.G. Wells, and he repeatedly was writing to Gandhi, and Gandhi was not responding. But finally, he responded by saying that you have started from the wrong side. Don't start from the rights, you start from the duties and then scale it up, because the empowered cannot have rights. Is a disempowered can have rights. Empowered should have duties. Now here, upper riparian and lower riparian, upper riparian can have duties. The lower riparian ought to have rights because they are disempowered. If the upper riparian says that they will have rights, equal rights, then it doesn't follow, and you become anti-Gandhian for that matter. So Brahmaputra is an interesting river. When the Chinese started building the dams on the Yalnung-Sangpo, the Indians were mad and were telling Bangladeshis to join us against China. And the Bangladeshis to say, no, you go ahead and you solve your problem with China, because for years we have been telling you we are lower riparian. Now suddenly you realize you are lower riparian. So I think the point is, as I said, I'll go back to the issue of mindset. It's a very serious issue, I think, because our understanding of the world comes through our mind. It doesn't exist independently. And that is where I think we need some changes. Thank you.
And again, that mindset. So when it was about our own country and our policymakers and diplomats, the citizens and the civil society, and we felt we were not informed. And there was a lot of misinformation, or there was lack of information. So there is the fear mongering, as Professor Ahmed has already talked about. So we are often told about which political party feels that this argument would bring in value, just like in Delhi or in Colombo or in Islamabad, there's no difference. So let us not try to, different shades of it, but it's the same approach, which is that by fear mongering, you keep your citizens in a state where they are not asking the duty bearers for what they're entitled. And this is exactly why when ActionAid and we partnered with Professor Ahmed and other like-minded groups, the awareness, the people living by the rivers, the people living with the rivers need to have an information in terms of what the policymakers are deciding. And it's always in the name of the people, by the way. All politicians decide in the name of the people, where is that people? And it's very abstract. And particularly if you're a woman or an Adivashi, you don't even exist. So there's no voice. So that's exactly why we had taken up this initiative. And I was asking the question about life and right to live. I was coming very much from the rights of the rivers, because the rivers had no one govern it and no one tried to manage it. They had their own flows. We humans interfered with that. And by interfering, we have done a lot of damage, not only to the river, but to the humans. So that's why the whole activism around right to river was rights of the rivers was very important. And in 2019 in Bangladesh, our High Court came up with that. So it's recognized as an entity. And that has led to a lot of initiatives. Like you talked about pollution. No one would have bothered about pollution until there was this judgment saying that it needs to be taken care of, not only for your own survival, but for greater common, for climate change. And so it is a driving force. So in domestic politics, it's important. But then again, as already mentioned, we are a lower riparian, and all your rubbish from the Himalayas down from India, it all comes and lands here. And we used to be very excited that our land, the siltation was very rich, and it made us, but now we have issues of dredging and it is blocking. So there are many parts of the country which is it's not a blessing. It's been a dredging. So we'll also have, if we have conversations that we have to talk about siltation, we'll have to talk about what's coming down, how it is useful, so on. And therefore, civil society in this part of the world, and there are like-minded groups in South Asia where we have raised this issue, and we are doing advocacy and campaigning. And then now we are also talking about fossil fuel and the chemical pollutions as well. In addition to what the river is bringing, we are also being at the mercy of fossil fuel and corporates, and they are destroying our water. So we as humans, we have to see the common interest. the collective interest. And I think that's where, but my point is the society has always looked at the other side. When women, Adivasis, LGBTs, of children, there was violence against them. So therefore, in society, there's tolerance to violence. You have to change that narrative. You have to change the mindset of every individual that lives in these societies. Because you can give an explanation on the basis of religion. You can give an explanation on the basis of poverty. Well, why did you get your girl child married? Because I couldn't feed her. Or why did you do this? Because it's allowed in religion. Why don't you give water to the Dalits? Because that's my religion. So I can come up with ample examples. But the fact is, we like hierarchy. We like power. And the power is at the base of any diplomatic conversations. And that's where we have to have a collective voice and come together.
Let me.
No.
Dr. Pradeep.
Quickly to the question raised by the gentleman, yes, it's right that we have to manage the blockade thing, and that's why I talked about that. First, let us have a domestic setup of control of managing the river. That river have a good flow in our domestic area, then we can actually lead to the sub-regional and regional level. And basically, madam, you now actually fleshed out the distinction. I was also trying to say that when we talk about right to life and human rights and all those things, but the polluters are also were human, who were polluting the river. So as if that were also part of their right. So that's where if the entity is recognized, right to live of the river is recognized, then probably this kind of philosophy, it's at a philosophical level. That's fine. But the final word would be that we must end in a positive manner. And I think in public administration, we have a shift from public administration to new public management. And this new public management actually talks that, you treat citizen as a customer. If you delay the process, it will hamper you. You will go to the private institutes. So river is also that if you neglect river, continuously neglect river, then the river will, give, the environment will pay you back. In India, we have these thunderstorms and these river flushes suddenly, depleting all the lands and all. In Uttarakhand, we have these flushes of river suddenly. So I think we must actually give river its due recognition, but at the same time, we must also think that how we as in whatever way we can contribute to that recognition. So I think we have all a good task at hand. We should go back and we should think over how to network among ourselves, how to use our resources, and come back with many more probable suggestions which would make rivers of South Asia a very, very good area of governance. Thank you.
Certainly.
For 30 seconds, just on what is to be done, and since we have faculty members from Northeast, one of the idea I was involved in establishing the South Asian University way back, and our idea was to have thematic faculties and not traditional faculties. Unfortunately, we could not push that idea as yet. And one of the faculties that was thought was Faculty of Water Futures. So I think since North-South University has links with Brunei University and also universities in Northeast, let's try to think about even on an e-version of a Faculty of Water Futures, where Brunei, Bangladesh, and India can work together and bring other ideas in that. And I say an e-version given the cost and all, and it's possible to have something of that kind, because if you have a Faculty of Water Futures, then you start thinking differently. So I guess that would be a very concrete suggestion to that what you wanted. So that's something that I think you can think about. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Dr. Iqbal.
Thank you, respected Chair. Thanks for the opportunity. I think when I was talking to Professor Tawfiq, This is actually the follow-up conference from the conference we held in UBD on rivers, but we're focusing more on more conceptual level and Southeast Asia. And then, so we didn't really, this came up and we didn't really put in conscious weightage on a particular question of river and water. But when you raise this question, actually that made me feel that this is a very important distinction that we need to keep in mind. And I was thinking about this in the last few minutes, and I think there are two aspects of it. One is, if we think of water, the positive side is that water is a bigger concept, bigger spatial, bigger conceptual issue. And in all religions, we're talking about Aristotle and others, philosophers, but also looking from the faith and creation theologies, Bible, Upanishads and Qurans. Water is central, water is fundamental. And Ma is in Quran is, of course, in Arabic, this is pani, water. And there is a strange similarity of the fact that Mekong is Ma, river, then Brahmaputra itself, if I consider, is a son of the father or mother. If there is a son of Brahma, then probably there is mother also. So actually, if we look at deeply into this creation theology, it's coming from water. There's no doubt about it. And Sir Imtiaz sir also deal with that. So looking at it, it is an important point that water, pani, is an important theme for a conference. That's fine. But the problem is that it's too vast. So it also includes seawater. So that automatically, devalues the problem issue of river, because river has a particular set of issues, because river is the most intimate site of interaction between human and non-human, between human and human. So more than anything. So I think that's one important distinction that probably indirectly worked in our mind. So didn't put water. But at the same time, I think this makes me think that we need to bring in the water issues for one particular reason that connects back to all the question of commons that we are talking about and mindset. I'd like to take the 30 seconds about it. So I think we need to think ahead of our whole discussion. I think we're subconsciously talking about surface water. Okay, so that is, I think, river water, that is more than, I think, only 2%, more or less, is the fresh water. And that includes only, I think, relatively a minority of it is river water. A majority is in the form of permafrost and glacier. So the question is, if we can claim, because India, China is trying to divert river, taking to the drought-prone areas, if that is they can do, why can't we say, what about the ice caps in the Himalaya and Tibet? Because that is also part of the commons. So if you can divert that, you have to count that thing also. Now, because there is this very physics of commons that if the ice doesn't melt in a proportionate manner, it doesn't come, and deltaic areas are not getting rise. All this is absolutely connected. And that's why, Tibet, sometimes they use a small light sometimes on one of the rivers, and they say that it's not very far. Ocean is not very far. So they're basically, in their mindset, ocean is not very far. So those who are living in the mountains, in the origin of the river, and those who are living in the delta, they are physically and mentally, conceptually, this is a collective commons. So I think we need to devise a policy that will take us beyond the question of management and governance. We need to think about a question of ecological equity, and that will take us to claim our rights. Those who are in the lower stream, they have to claim back the ice caps, and those who are in the ice cap areas, they can claim lower, so that this this question of Bay of Bengal and Himalaya, this becomes particularly prominent. So I think Pani is important to answer your question. I think river is also important, but we need to look at it through different lens. But I would consider that water should be the presiding concept over this.
Thank you very much for this clarification. Maybe when I'm sure Professor Tawfiq is listening. So when we have next round of discussion, we will possibly look at the possibilities of creating a nexus between the two and see how it's played out in global politics. Good. We have a couple of minutes. I'm told that the chief guest of the concluding session is still on the way. So any questions to the panelists? Please.
So from again governance point of view and diplomacy, that we are listening so many new ideas which are very, very helpful to understand the whole river governance issues. But also as you, especially one practitioner, diplomat, and the other, Professor Imtiaz, is a theoretician of international relations. So we live in a pragmatic world. So let us also talk a little bit about the real world, not ideal world only. So we are having problems with transborder sharing of rivers, and we are seeing these problems are real and these are not being resolved, and we can foresee the more problems coming. So let us talk also about this elephant in the room, that we have this real kind of the challenges. So how to deal with this TISTA, or even by 2026, the new agreement we need to do with quota sharing. And also now the TISTA, Chinese are interested to invest for a dam. So all these things, and how the pragmatist and the realist are thinking from theoretical and practitioner point of view. I put this question both to Professor Shohid as a former foreign secretary, and also Professor Imtiaz. I cannot yet probably listen the answer because the minister is there, so I just going to receive him, but please carry on.
Thank you very much. We will take 2-3 minutes. I think the person who has asked question is leaving the room. That means no longer to give the answer. Good. No, I'm very happy that my colleague from the government sort of pointed out that the whole issue of water diplomacy seems to be receding from places where it should be anchored very strongly. It's true, say 2-3 years more before we sit down and renegotiate the Ganges Treaty. When the Ganges Treaty was negotiated, and when it will be renegotiated, it's absolutely a different world, not only globally, but also in terms of relation between the two countries. You have a huge people's opinion, which wasn't there in 96. When we were there, it was done in a relatively isolated windowless rooms, which may not be possible anymore. So that's the second part. And also, I think the power symmetry or asymmetry between the two countries has also changed, may not be in terms of a degree, but in terms of composition of the power. Both Bangladesh and India plays in a different field. So taking that into consideration, it will be very important. And actually, when Professor Tawfiq sort of brought, and Dr. Iqbal, they sort of thought of this, we had a understanding that eventually we will try and put what you call the water negotiation courses in place. We do in the 𝑑𝒆𝒐𝒈𝒚 negotiation courses for the civil servants, on a regular basis. Razon Bhai is here, another civil servant of ours, trying to sort of tell them that the world will not be the same, and you have to get your act together in terms of negotiating, especially with the private sector. So we take that into point, and I'm sure that we'll call upon you for your resources to better equip Bangladesh to negotiate. The second, and I think it will be a vastly different chemistry of negotiation when the Ganges comes in. So that'll be also interesting because there are certain provisions in that which actually never been implemented in terms of using the water that went into the Bay of Bengal. That was one of the issues that Bangladesh will really put in a solid kind of programs, projects in terms of water, whatever goes into the Bay of Bengal. So that's the area, but I will not go into the tricky part of it today. So that's taken into consideration, and certainly we will see how much we could from the North-South University side we can do it. Now coming back to the whole issue of diplomacy and geopolitics, I see a very disturbing trend nowadays. Anything that doesn't make sense, anything that you want to bully or bash, you say geopolitics. I mean, that cannot be, no? Geopolitics is neither a negative term nor a positive term. It's a khela. And if you are in a diplomacy, if you are a state party, you have to play the play. It could be a bad play, it could be a good play, depending as to what kind of a player are you. But if you continue to blame, and I see in every sense, the third, fourth sentence is, geopolitics has to be blamed. Oh, that cannot be the way out. So my request would be to my young colleagues is, look at geopolitics as a fun game. It's an exciting game. You can play and get benefit for yourself and for the country. It's not a bad word. It's not a bad concept. Every country plays, so is Bangladesh. Similarly, diplomacy is not something that you should leave out from your life. We do diplomacy all along our life. Diplomats are not all bad. I'm not saying all are good, but not all are bad. So change the sort of as Professor Imtiaz said, that change the angle, change the platform. And then you'll find the fun of it. I'll stop here because I think. Oh, please. Tarawa will never leave me without a fight. Please. Hey.
So আপনারাই তো এই যে এটা তৈরি করছেন, ডিপ্লোমেসি বুঝবা না, জিওপলিটিক্স বুঝবা না, ওয়াটার শেয়ারিং বুঝবা না। আমরা সাধারণ লোকজন তো আপনাদের দিকে তাকা থেকে যে আপনারা যা বলেন। So I think those who engage in diplomacy and geopolitics like to keep this mystery and এটাকে demystify করতে হবে। But on a serious note, আমার মনে হয় যে আমাদের বড় একটা গ্যাপ হলো, আমরা হিস্ট্রিও পড়ি না, জিওপলিটিক্সও পড়ি না। কেন কোন দেশ এখন কোনো আইসোলেশনে বসবাস করে না, এবং আমাদের ছাত্রছাত্রীদেরকে না তো হিস্ট্রি না পড়ে আপনি লাভ দিয়ে আপনার ইয়েটা কই, ওটার রেফারেন্স পয়েন্ট কই, এটার ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড কই। ছাত্রছাত্রীরা যেহেতু ইউনিভার্সিটিতে আমরা এটা পড়া, কিছু না হোক হিস্ট্রি নভেল পড়ো, হিস্ট্রি গল্প পড়ো। আমরা যখন ছোট ছিলাম, ব্রিটিশদের একটা তো বুদ্ধি ছিল, ওরা ওদের সমস্ত রাজা রানীদের নিয়ে novels লিখছে, এবং we all read about the Tudors and Stuarts and Henry VIII and ওদের অকাম সুকাম কূটনীতি দুর্নীতি সব কেন পড়তাম, বই তাদের না করে কিছু গল্প ছলে কিছু নভেলের ছলে আনতে হবে। If you don't know your history, you can't have a conversation. Where is your reference point? এবং আমরা যেটা দেখি যে বাঙালি হুজুকে, আমি আমার দেশের ছেলে মেয়েদেরকে Google gives you a little bit of information but doesn't give you deeper understanding. So I would request we all need to read about diplomacy and geopolitics. I mean, on the serious side. So it's not about blaming or blame attribution, but আমার নিজের আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং থাকলে না তো আমি আপনাকে বলতে পারবো, and this is true for all issues.
Today I take your point. Thank you very much. We have come to an end. Wish we had little more time to have a discussion. Let me end where I started. The whole India-Bangladesh river and water issues cannot be discussed, dialogued, and negotiated in isolation. It has to be within the broader gambit of the relationship. Often we have seen that it's being isolated from rest of the relationship, and then we try and build a case. I think the time has come, and I think both the countries have realized that it has to be done along with others. If you are looking at a much brighter, fairer, progressive relationship, then you have to bring in both the water and river issue into it and then discuss. If you are asking that there should be a greater convergence between the two countries in every sense, then the convergence should also spill over to the water and river issues. I will, unless and until that realization comes in, I think we'll continue to have a blame game in play. Thank you very much. It has been a wonderful session. Thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you for coming in. Thank you. Over to 𝒂𝒃.
Thank you, sir, for chairing this session. Distinguished guests and authors of the conference. Now, shortly, our closing session will be starting, and I'm handing over the session to my colleague, Ms. 𝒔𝒊𝒏𝒆𝒄𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈. Thank you.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I will request our chief guest, Dr. Shamsul Alam, Honorable State Minister, Minister of Planning, to take his seat at the front. And also our keynote speaker, Dr. 𝒂𝒐𝒊𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒆 Saikia, Professor, IIT Guwahati, to take his seat. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, respected guests, participants of the conference, faculties and colleagues of North-South University, our chief guest, Dr. Shamsul Alam, Honorable State Minister, Ministry of Planning, Government of Bangladesh, and today's session chair, Professor Ismail Hussain, Honorable Pro-Vice Chancellor of North-South University. Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon, and namaskar. I am Farin Shabdam, Research Associate of SIPG. We are extremely pleased to have you with us today in the closing ceremony of the International Conference on Rivers of South Asia, Connecting Ecology, People, and Governance. The conference was organized by the South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance, SIPG of North-South University, Faculty and Arts of Social Sciences, University Brunei Darussalam, and the National River Conservation Commission, NRCC, Bangladesh. The South Asia Network for Public Administration, SANPA served as an associate partner for the event. The conference featured vibrant panel discussions, paper presentations, and interactive dialogues that delved into various aspects of river governance, environmental conservation, and the social and economic implications of sustainable river management practices. Distinguished audience, let us get started with today's proceedings. First, I would like to welcome Dr. 𝒊𝒗𝒆𝒓𝒔, Professor, IIT Guwahati, India, for today's keynote presentation. The title of his paper is Rivers as Historical Actors Along Skyline of Eastern Himalaya and the Bay of Bengal. The floor is yours, sir.
Good afternoon. It is an honor as a historian to come to the concluding session, right? And I'm sure the rivers will be remembered, and rivers also do remember us. Honorable Shamsul Alam, sir, the Honorable State Minister of Planning, Bangladesh, Honorable Dr. Hussain, sir, a Pro Vice Chancellor, NSU, and all the distinguished present, those who are here. Thank you. And I really appreciate that you have given me this honor and opportunity to speak on the rivers. Last few years, many of us in India, we have been thinking that why only the humans? Why not humans, non-humans speak on behalf of the humans? Can we write the history of the tigers, or can the elephants, tigers, rhinos, fish, cows, buffaloes, they write the history of the humans? Can we see the human evolutions from their perspective? I think we have been quite successful. Many of us have been trying to build an argument and built on historical premises that how over several thousands of years in this landscape, these important non-humans, they have shaped the destiny of our past and present and the future. Today's short presentation is part of this larger understanding. Rivers as a historical actors, right? And this is what we have been talking for the last 2 days. In a recent work, the celebrated American environmental historian, John McNeill, he has suggested that the present century is beginning to see a vastly expanded notion of the human past, where human agency seems to be entangled with every kind of organic and non-organic material as potentially to challenge the notion of history inherited from the 19th and the 20th centuries. Can our rivers potentially change our understanding of South Asian past? That our rivers are going to play a key role in the fate of South Asian present and the future is what this conference has successfully spelled out. As a part of this conference concluding session's thoughts, I would like to draw your attentions to a few things in the form of 2 propositions. My first proposition comes from a simple fact. A deep and a comprehensive understanding of the rivers of Bangladesh, West Bengal, and India's Northeast will be possible if our frameworks are informed by a cohesive and meaningful environmental unit rather than narrow jurisdiction of political maps. To make this point clear, I have intentionally inserted the words along the skyline of the Eastern Himalaya and Bay of Bengal into the title of my talk. This extensive skyline brings under its ambit a wide range of rivers of different geographical time. Brahmaputra is pre-Himalayan, of different sizes, of belonging to complex political, economic, literary, and environmental backgrounds. Despite this apparent disunity, all these rivers
have been united by several environmental forces. These include the deep history of monsoon, climatic, tectonic shifts, earthquakes, temperatures, seasonal cycles, as well as the history of plant and non-human lives. Equally important are atmospheric conditions, wind, geographical features, and tidal activity. The way Mediterranean Sea can boast a great story of unity despite its vastness and fragmentation. All the rivers along this skyline of the Eastern Himalaya and the Bay of Bengal, though they are not relatively interconnected, needs to be seen through a framework of environmental unity. These rivers, despite their relative autonomous characters, similar to the Mediterranean, often influence each other and create a singular waterscape. I think we need to de-recognize the power and authority of the land, and we increasingly need to think of our landscape as a waterscapes. This unbroken unity began to crumble only recently as colonial rule expanded into these areas. The colonial officials, in their maps and other instruments of governance, began to imagine these areas crisscrossed by autonomous rivers having independent political and cultural origin and existence. My second proposition, based on this claim of environmental unity of these rivers, is to think these rivers as a key historical actors in making and unmaking of not only this vast landscape and waterscapes, but equally the lives of humans and non-humans. I think we have very intentionally and painfully ignored the lives of non-humans and other organisms in our historical scholarships. The 20th century refused to acknowledge the historical agency of the rivers, the point Dr. Iftikhar Iqbal and others have so persuasively argued in this conference yesterday and today. Throughout the age of colonial history, and even during the decades of the rivers, were increasingly assigned to the river technocrats instead of boatmen. Apology for the use of the word man here. Fishermen, crocodiles, fishers, poets, painters, novelists, and so on. Historian Timothy Lee Klein, in a recent work, has recently argued that how materials, plants, animals, minerals, the elements of and humans make history, writes that humans and their history actually grow and developed in a vast material environment that creates, sustains, and shapes them. Others have already shown that historical processes are complex, associated networks traceable through human and non-human initiated artificial and natural elements. Taking these arguments further, I would like to suggest that one can look at the historical processes along a continuum of dominance by nature and artifice, a continuum shaped by interactive flows. If that is an acceptable proposition, can I propose that the rivers, including the deltas, are to be considered as the key actors of the historical processes in this environmental zone marked by the Bay of Bengal in the far south and the Eastern Himalaya in the extreme north. The rivers of this environmental unit not only were collectively, I emphasize this focus on collective, crucial for historical processes of financial, political, military, cultural domains in this watery landscape. While these rivers were at the center stage of our terrestrial history, unfortunately, despite so many promising works on the present and the future of these rivers, we know little of how these rivers had historically helped in creating not only common home ground for both humans and non-humans and plant lives, but also facilitated political, economic, cultural historical processes. Think of medieval wars or military strategies, agricultural expansion, history of rice productions, daring expeditions of river pirates, volumes of trade in export and the imports of commodities, history of population mobility, trade networks, droughts and famines, of the pre-colonial or colonial history of land settlements, the rivers will have many answers to provide. Or think of the complex human settlement patterns. Rivers will act as an archive to answer these daunting questions. Rivers are also key players in the nutritional history of the humans and non-humans. These rivers had essentially predated our time, and they were witness to all human and other organisms, historical ups and downs, and the river footprints. Remember those actions. The list is really long, and I refrain from citing more evidences. It is important to consider these rivers as one environmental unit under the thick cover of the undivided monsoonal clouds, as well as historical agents of deep economic and social processes of human lives in this vast watery landscape dam. To understand the river's critical historical agency, it is equally important to search for new archives, which can give voices to the rivers of this environmental unit. The official archives may be the not best place to rethink about our archives. There are enormous amount of problems of these official archives. Many things are missing from these archives. What are the missing things? Human emotions, the stories of sand, the waves, temperatures, velocities, non-humans, dead particles, all do disappear from these official archives. Possibilities of a new archive. We can think of different forms of archives in this endeavor. I would especially like to draw your attention to 4 sets of archives, which might help us to give some sense of these new possibilities. First is the geological sets of archives, right? Himalayas and extensive mountain and hilly regions. We know so little about those mountains, hills, and their influence in the making. There are good geological books written by the geologists. How many historians have engaged with these geological books? That is the important questions, right? In fact, more recently, and in fact, in the last 200 years, an amount of knowledge that has been built on the Himalayas and extensive range of scholars that has been produced primarily from the beginning of the coal and the petroleum explorations. The archive is really deep and resourceful. These historians should really understand to use it to understand the rivers far better in a more meaningful way. I have been reading these archives for the last 10 years. It is not mathematical, it is poetic, and it is wonderful to understand these rivers' passionate human and non-human histories. You know, this geological archives is also of other things. It is the story of the sand. And as you all know, you have been referring to these stories of the sand. You know, the sands are tiny, really tiny, micromillimeter, right? Micromillimeter. But the power that it has accumulated and it can influence in the making and the unmaking of this particular environmental unit, it is unbelievable. We simply tend to ignore the sands, right? We don't have a history of the sands, right? I'm sure about that. We have numbers, you know, but see that this tininess, but the power the sands have in terms of its mobility, its strength, and its energy. Professor Imtiaz Ahmed has mentioned about the sands earlier, right? All these rivers who come down from the Himalaya, one of the famous Western magazine, The Economist, has said the rivers of these regions, they act like a massive conveyor belts, carrying water and sediment from the world's greatest mountain into the deltas, right? Same is the story for Brahmaputra and other rivers, right? They have collectively shaped and unshaped these processes, historical processes, and it is important for us to understand the sand and its archive. I'm not talking about the volume of the sand. I want the historians to walk around the sands and have a sense of what is the footprint left behind by those stories. The Himalayas and its continuous making and unmaking, right? As the many geologists have been writing in the last 2 decades, that it is the deformation and deformation of these Himalayas that the sands are coming slowly and slowly, and our stories, our destinies are being rebuilt continuously. Should we not try to give a voice to the sand, historical voice, and allow them to be a major player as an historical narrative? I'm sure in future someone will write the history of these regions from the eyes and the language of the sand particles. There are also the deep archives of aquatic life. And these are not only of the biologists or geologists, there are also the painters, or literary writers who have written extraordinary stories about this aquatic life, right? These are really meaningful archives. It is important for us to explore these thousands of manuscripts lying across Bangladesh, West Bengal, Assam, to understand these literary archives, the paintings, poems, and precisely about the aquatic life, and think about our historical destinations. Think about the 19th and the 20th centuries scholarships on the aquatic life, on the crocodiles, on gharials, on the fishes. The volumes of work that has been produced in the late 18th century to the early 20th century, they can be really an important benchmark for our rethinking of our region's histories of the rivers. Think of these non-humans, the way the rhinoceroses, for example, I come from the land of the rhinoceroses, the way it has created the landscape, that is also so important. Creation of the grassland, the grasslands arrival into this region 6,000 years before, and its continuous survival because of the floods produced by the rivers and the survival of the rhinos, that stories needs to be told. The deers, the elephants, tigers, right? Everything, all stories needs to be told. The other archives, the archives of human imagination and the labor, that is equally important. It is not only about the fishing, it is also about the creation of these paddy fields. That is a great story of human labor, human imaginations, and they are deeply connected with the stories of flood and the rivers. We need to pay attention to that. Great engineering works, right, that has been done over the last several thousands of years. Apologies for the word several thousands. I'm not exactly saying several thousands, but almost for a longer period of time. Then the kind of meticulous engineering works that were done to control the rivers, not in the modern technocrat sense, the boats, because boats and the rivers, they are great friends, great companions. That has to be done through these great works done by the human imagination and the boat labor, right? In fact, you know, the boatmen, they carried all the energies produced by the river and its water into their muscles. The boatmen's muscles are precisely formed on the strength of this, the very complex mechanism of transfer of labor and the power from the river's water into the human body. That archive needs to be retold and rethink. I'm sure all of us are familiar, but this archive needs to be tapped, right? The way these meaningful experiments with fishing and the different ways of our understanding of our nutritional history, the cultural history, and also environmental history of food and this labor, that needs to be tapped finally. And finally, the story of the human emotions, right? Enormous numbers of manuscripts are lying undiscovered, underplayed, right? These manuscripts, right? These are some of the examples of the Assamese manuscript. Similar manuscripts are also available for Bengali in big numbers. They are great potential to rethink about our river's history. This is how the Brahmaputra was imagined in the 18th century manuscripts, right? Similar are stories of the Great Tilak in the 18th century. Think of the human mind, human imaginations, and the water and the rivers, right? The great potentiality that are waiting from this archive. Finally, these archives can, I'm very sure, tell the new history of the rivers. Not only rivers can be restored to the position of a central stage of an actor or in the drama of human and non-human life into this story. I come to my final sections of my presentations. It is equally important to understand the rivers, this history of historical predicament from the lenses of the present. In the early years of the 21st century, the rivers of this long and complex environmental zone remain as active as ever, like it was there millions of years ago. They perform similarly and stage everyday dramas collectively. So are their floodplains. Sand is still deep ground from the Himalayas like millions of years ago. Those that do not add to the layers of the land, they swim to the Bay of Bengal. The river's swelling waters continue to cause annual floods that wreak havoc. Waters continue to cause annual floods. Floods still arrive with an extraordinary ferocity, causing great damage to human lives, crops, livestock. The river's frenetic flows still carve out lands, we call erosion technically, from the banks, but it also gave birth to the land. Floodwaters gush through these countless breaches into amendments elsewhere. Newer areas are flooded. After the floodwater recedes, many find their agricultural fields filled with sand, sediment, and ruined landscape. In many areas, exhausted villagers, like their forefathers, moved to new areas in search of cultivable lands. Floods come with full force, repeating familiar tropes and miseries. Many upstream hydel projects had released waters to protect dam walls. Others blamed the corrupt excess of contractors, engineers, politicians for the poor maintenance of bank maintenance. This is not the always story. As has been the case with earlier floods, the government's vote to dam the unruly rivers, high-pitched political promises were made. All these miseries would be over, the government said. Once the dams were built, the rivers were dredged, forced to flow through a deep channel. The promise of flood-free floodplains came along the agenda of converting the river into productive source of hydropower. The government cited European, Chinese, and American rivers. An image of the dry surface free of water now seems to have become part of the idea of the rivers. Others are constantly at loggerheads with those who desire to prolong the river's wilderness. The former portrayed the river as a great source of wastage, an idea akin to that of imperial understanding of floodplains as wastelands in the 19th century. On the other hand, large numbers of people have resisted the plans of recasting the wilderness of the rivers. The political after effect of these claims on the river and its waters are clearly visible in the recent years. Unsurprisingly, our turbulent rivers now offer rich harvest of votes in election time. The governments also faced intertwined political and environmental dilemmas about the rivers. An ever-increasing biographical and political narrative of the river sadly ignored the deep cultural, ecological, and political past of the river. As some of the rivers like Brahmaputra, Padma, Yamuna acquire significant global attention, other narratives about it have sprung up. These new chronicles are deeply embedded in a desire to rewrite the destiny of the rivers as well as the larger regions. They also unmistakably portray the rivers as a primary source of these skylines, all the O's. These narratives also undermine the cultural experience of the people who lived and befriended with the rivers for long. As I had hinted earlier, the destiny of these rivers from this environmental unit in the 21st century looks set to be determined by river engineers who plan dams, control the statistics of the rivers, international financial agencies that fund hydropower projects, and governments that export the hydropower or other business players. In fact, all the rivers of the Eastern Himalaya in present now face an uncertain futures. Proposals for hundreds of ambitious hydel projects loom large over the Eastern Himalaya. Both China and India are front runners in this. Bangladesh, with little to gain from this mad rush, has expressed serious apprehension about such projects. At the turn of the 21st century, many of these rivers are at the heart of regional and international political narratives. as a contested political, economic, cultural, and environmental entities. In this process, the rivers within this rim of Eastern Himalaya and the Bay of Bengal steadfastly has become part of a cherished ecological patriotism idea. But at the same time, their historical agencies have been denied. I hope these straight thoughts can help us to rethink our rivers as historical actors, as well as the idea of the rivers can be a good marker of the region to imagine all of us as a part of one environmental unit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for such a lively and insightful presentation. Now, I'd like to invite Dr. K.M. Kabirul Islam, Director, NRCC Bangladesh and Executive Committee Member of SANCRA, to reflect on the key takeaways of the conference.
Respected Chair, Honorable Chief Guest, fellow panelists, authors, experts, researchers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. Okay. Probably I have been given the toughest job of the conference to present 2 days conference in 10-15 minutes. Well, let's try. The conference comprises of inaugural and closing sessions, 7 working sessions, and 1 policy colloquium, 2 keynote opening and closing papers, and 23 papers were presented. I'll try to summarize the sessions conducted during the last 2 days. First session, first I would like to take the opportunity to say something about the keynote speaker of the opening session. Dr. Iqbal set the tone of the conference. He effortlessly bridging the poetics, a matter of emotion, and politics or policies, a matter of the brain. He demonstrated প্রবলেম হচ্ছে একটু বড় করা যায় না এখানে এখানে থাকলে ভালো হতো তো ঠিক আছে sorry for well he argued that rivers can be seen with a more humanistic approach. Not always through the lenses of a narrow engineering mindset. He described various uses of rivers and their profound importance in the lives of the people in the country. He emphasized that behind poor river governance, colonial hydrophobia has been the primary matter of concern. He eventually argued that the rivers are dying due to the unchanging climate of our colonial mind. Now, the panel 1, 2 papers were presented at the session. The session described entitlement of rivers as legal persons and the associated rights rivers possess. The session emphasized on proactive and coordinated efforts from the concerned government departments to solve the current crisis of the rivers. This session illustrated the key challenges in water resources management of Bangladesh and the major initiatives taken till now by the NRCC. The discussion focused on the importance of initiating updated technologies to overcome the challenges and argued for using artificial intelligence in sustainable and efficient water resources management. Panel 2 This session revealed that the present context of river management is largely a top-down approach. It should be changed for the sake of sustainable water governance. The speakers found that political interests are in the priority, not the people. They argued that more people engaged in making decisions about the river, the better in the long run. This session also emphasized on integrated water resources management. The speakers argued that coordination among various departments and ministries of the country is the key to solving the complex issues of water governance. For this purpose, NRCC must be strengthened. This session described the historical scenario of major rivers around Dhaka city and also the river-centric livelihood of the people beside the rivers. The speakers argued that the connectivity of these rivers is pivotal for the restoration of ecology and overall sustainable river management. This session also presented the current context of encroachment and pollution of the river Anjona in West Bengal. The researcher argued that to restore the river, the participation of people and their understanding of the prospects of the river should get the highest priority. The speakers stated that the climate change has emerged as an extremely challenging force behind sustainable water resources management. They suggested what we have to be proactive to tackle the challenges and find a coordinated approach. Panel 3 illustrated the erosion along the river Padma using satellite images, QGIS and HEC-RAS model, and found that the Noria Upazila of Shariatpur faced the highest erosion, and on the Mawa side, there was very little erosion. This session also emphasized on symbiosis among humans, rivers, and environment. The central argument was development is absolutely essential to economic prosperity, but the environment should be given the highest priority. Speakers argued that the proposition of Tista River water sharing has been really complex. The diversion of water from the upstream is important in India because of the huge demand of water for agriculture. However, the policy should be benevolent for both India and Bangladesh. This session also revealed that India and Nepal have around 610 transboundary rivers, and efficient coordination can significantly help the livelihood of people from both the countries. Panel 4. This session explored that the Ganges and the Padma, both rivers, have a significant role in the culture of South Asia and illustrated various aspects of it. It argued that the history, culture, and civilization of Bengal are heavily indebted to the rivers of the region. The speakers use a river-centric analytical model to examine various novels and find that rivers have been used as a metaphor for human experiences, contemplate identity, memory, and other universal human emotions. Brahmaputra was especially instrumental for the development of trade between Assam and Bengal. Now, governments on both sides have taken a renewed interest in revitalizing these historic riverine connections and bolster trade between Bangladesh and India's northeastern region. It was argued that Great Divide in 1947 divided the population and territories of the Indian subcontinent, including rivers, politically and geographically. Influenced by the colonial mindset, post-independent realities witnessed water conflict, water diplomacy, and water politics across South Asia. Regional water security can be achieved through dialogue, discussions, and the pursuit of knowledge. This session finally argued for China, India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh cooperation and forming regional water cooperation framework for the GBM basin. Panel 5. This session explored noteworthy bureaucratic initiatives, various dams and embankments, and how interventions impacted the lives of the people living just beside the Brahmaputra. This session also illustrated a comparative study on the prevailing legislations on river governance in Bangladesh, India, and New Zealand, as well as the obstacles to enforce the legislations. Argued that development is obviously important. However, environment should get priority over development. This session discussed the present scenario of pollution and encroachment of Korotwa River and argued that the situation is deteriorating day by day. Panel 6. This session depicted a comparative study about present physical characteristics between 𝒔𝒊𝒏𝒂𝒏 River and 𝒊𝒏𝒏𝒆𝒄𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒂𝒏 Channel, and suggested some policy implications such as well-planned waste disposal, integrated river basin management, and mutual cooperation. This session also discussed the economic activities which has been impacted by the Padma Bridge. It revealed the whole regression process and how the monthly income of some respondents has been reduced. The speakers argued that the bridges are important, but not more than the river itself. Panel 7. This session described the impacts of industrial waste on the major rivers around Dhaka city, also the impacts of river training using satellite images of the Jamuna River. This session showed the visual presentation of changes in river dynamics. This session explored the complex dimension of hydropolitics of South Asia, focusing on water resources of Afghanistan, argued that mutual collaboration is the key and sharing of knowledge will excel the mutual benefits of all the countries of South Asia. I'm not going to tell about the policy colloquium and the closing keynote because most of you are present at the two sessions. Last but not the least, the two key takeaways we can have from the conference are: one, track 2 diplomacy, that is people-to-people connectivity, scientist-to-scientist connectivity, academia-to-academia connectivity. And in this regard, we can mention the proposal given by the two professors of University of Kolkata, India, to organize third round of such conference at their campus. And number 2 is publication of a book comprising of the papers presented in this conference. SIPG is planning to publish a book comprising the papers. We can take the opportunity of the MOU signed with 𝒔𝒊𝒏𝒏𝒈 by SANPA for publishing the book. We can discuss with SANPA officials because they have the MOU with 𝒔𝒊𝒏𝒏𝒈 and they are publishing books on behalf of SANPA, so we can take this opportunity. So that's all. Thanks very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your precise summary. Distinguished audience, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Shamsul Alam, Honorable State Minister, Ministry of Planning, Government of Bangladesh, as today's chief guest. We eagerly await your words of advice and reflection, sir. The floor is yours.
Our chair, who is chairing this session, Dr. M. Ismail Hussain, who is Vice Chancellor and Treasurer in Charge, North-South University, and one of our keynote presenter in this session. His name is Dr. 𝒊𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒆, sorry for my mispronunciation. And distinguished guests and participants, I'm quite delighted to be amongst you in this very, I should say, stimulating session, particularly having one, very stimulating presentation by our keynote paper in this session, narrating how our civilization was benefited with
changing river courses with movement of rivers and how that affect ecology and history and all this. So thank you very much, Professor 𝒊𝒗𝒆𝒓𝒔, for your very insightful paper. And if I say truly, actually, this is a very important session organized by particularly this North-South University, along with North-South University, South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance of North-South University, Bangladesh, and another university, foreign university, I understand, University Brunei Darussalam, and along with our National River Commission, the chairman I saw before anyway, he was here, and another asset partner, South Asian Network for Public Administration, in short, it is called SHANPA. So I thank them very much for organizing this very useful seminar or discourses on particularly river issues. So it could be quite useful if I could, attend particularly the working sessions where technical papers are presented, covering different aspects of river dynamism, and the river management. Why I'm saying so, because I can tell to you that I led the preparation of Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100, which is a 100-year plan. And this is only one country in 21st century that has a plan for 100 years, actually, covering the natural resources issues, management of water resources, and managing the rivers. So Bangladesh, following the example of the Netherlands, you all know they have Delta Plan, which was formulated in 1954 after their great floods they have at that time, and it's unique country in managing rivers and water resources. So inspired by that, our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina actually expressed her desire to get cooperation from the Netherlands in framing such a plan, particularly handling environmental change issues. And you all know environmental change issue is a big issue. Bangladesh is one of the disaster-prone country. Out of 10 disaster-prone countries, Bangladesh is the 7th country in terms of disaster management, in terms of disasters facing. And Bangladesh is also one delta country out of 10 delta countries in the world. So I should say that was an heroic, I should say, attempt to go with creating a long-term plan, encountering climate change issues. So I just wonder why that has not come up in discussion here. No one discussed on that, and I don't know whether anyone was invited to present paper on Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100. That plan is of 1,200 pages, in 2 volumes. One with its, strategy, methodology, and other part is with, investment plan. So Bangladesh Delta Plan is a techno-economic plan, I should say, and it's a very created a lot of enthusiasm in our government, and particularly our Honorable Prime Minister actually praised about this plan, and she talked about a couple of times in her New York speech in General Assembly over the last couple of years. So this important seminar relating to rivers and ecology and people governance, particularly relating to rivers, why Delta Plan was not discussed or not came up in for someone who I not invited for presenting any paper on that. Anyway, just maybe casually you have, I don't know whether you should be aware about, I mean, the organizers. And as this is an international seminar, and our particularly our Indian, many of the scholars came and joined in this seminar, so they should also be apprised of this plan. So this is I led the preparation of Bangladesh Delta Plan. I worked for 4.5 years to prepare this plan. From 2014, I started work on, I led the preparation with a team of scholars, a team of consultants, local and international, around 23 international consultants. 23 international consultants actually worked for this plan. Anyway, that got approval in September 2018. So 5 years is over now, actually. So I also forgot many of the things that is there in the plan. Anyway, the plan actually we prepared to address the climate change issues, because we all know with the end of this century, there is probability of rise of temperature up to 2 degrees centigrade. So that should be a big threat for all of us, big threat for the civilization to go on. So we prepared that document that is of around 1,200 pages in 2 volumes. We emphasized, we divided the country in 4 hotspots based on, hotspot is a special climate conditions for a particular region, which is called a hotspot. So we divided the country in 6 hotspots, including urban areas is also one hotspot. So we have submarine area, one hotspot, coastal areas, one hotspot. So river areas forming one hotspot. So we take into account all the hotspots, considering their hydroclimatological condition, their natural resource setting, and hydrographical situation. And we develop strategies how to face, how to handle the natural resource issues in each hotspot, how to mitigate climate change impacts in each hotspot. So we particularly develop strategies, we set target what to attain in terms of productivity, how we handle agricultural issues, how we handle water security and nutritional issues in each hotspot area. Then we suggest action plan that need to be taken to face the environmental issues, environmental impacts. So in that way, you can say this is also a spatial planning, spatial planning based on regional realities, based on, I say, climate and hydrological characteristics of each area. And in the plan, first of all, we discussed what methodologies we followed. We actually studied 60 years of water resource management in Bangladesh. The programs, plans we undertook in the past, the successes and failures, in which areas we attained success, in which areas we failed. So those were reviewed in particular one paper completed by one engineer, hydrological engineer. He served for long in this country. He was Director General once for what we call is 𝒂𝒊𝒃, Water Resources Authority, like that. So we reviewed 60 years of our actions, plans, strategies, our successes, failures in water sector. Then we also go with conducting researches. 36 research papers were completed during 3-4 years by local consultants and by international consultants on river sedimentology, on river movement, this kind of thing, temperature change issues, empirical issues, and water change and a rainfall pattern in this country over last 60 years, this kind of thing. So after having all these researches, we prepared the first draft, and the technical committee was formed at that time, particularly consisting of 20 members, led by Professor 𝒔𝒊𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒕💊💏, who chaired this technical committee. And we included their economists, we included their water experts, we included environmentologists, climatologists, all this. As I remember, Professor Ismail also worked for one paper, maybe, as I remember, because he worked for in our couple of 5-year plans. So maybe in that Delta plan also, I'm not quite sure. As I remember, he was assigned with with one research paper. So, as I said, Bangladesh Delta Plan is a techno-economic plan. So we also discussed there how it will improve the domestic growth, how it will transform resource qualities in our countries. So how it will help what impact will be there if there is a rise of temperature for agriculture, productivity, flooding, all this. So that's, I should say, it's a technical document and done by many of the competent experts. And we faced not much criticism on this plan because I took a long time. We did it at the behest of our Honorable Prime Minister, but I led the preparation for 4.5 years, as I said to you. So that's why I'm saying this is a great job in terms of planning, particularly covering natural resource issues, water security, and nutritional issues, all this, and even our growth issues, how it will impact if you go with implementing Bangladesh Delta Plan, how it will affect our growth in our country, how it will affect transformation. So all these are discussed in detail in that document. So that is with the our Bangladesh Delta Plan. We all know Bangladesh is a delta country, and Bangladesh still is land is still forming. It's not a very old land in that sense, not fully formed yet. Still, lands are coming from the sea and rivers, and almost 1 billion tons of sediments actually pass through only on Brahmaputra and Jamuna river in this country. So you see huge amount of sediments pass through this river only. So we emphasize in the Delta Plan, I need to say, we need to emphasize particularly water security in this country and water security for performing agricultural activities and other industrial activities in these countries. And for that we emphasize formation of or creation of water reservoirs. Particularly, why we said that huge water body actually passes through all these 700 rivers in this country, not riverlets, rivers. We have so many riverlets crisscrossed by rivers in this country. So 700 big rivers. So all they bring huge amount of water in the rainy season or in the monsoon, if you can say. But we said we need to retain some water for dry season use. That's why you can use some of our rivers creating water bodies. For example, we said about Bengali River, it originates from where the Tista and Brahmaputra meets together. From that point, it's in Gaibanda or somewhere in the top. originates the Bengal River there, passes through Shirazgan, 5 districts, then passes through Shirazgan, then again meets Jamuna. Jamuna is called when Tista and Brahmaputra meet together. From that point, it is Jamuna. So you see 217 kilometers river is get dried down in the dry season. If you can keep water, when water starts receding in October, so say 3.5 meter water actually rise during the rainy season. So at the mouth, if we can close it in October, and other part, if we close the end part in Shirazgan, then you see 217 kilometers away. If you can if you can keep water, and from this Bengal River, 5 rivers also actually meet. Bengal River meets these 5 rivers on the way. Karatea, something in the North Bengal. So if you close the river mouth, close not for stopping it, actually for the time being to keep water. Then during the dry season, we can allow flowing of water in 5 rivers and in other adjacent areas. So if water can be retained that time, and all the water we don't allow to go and pass through Jamuna again into Bay of Bengal, then there should not be any depth of water in rainy season, in winter season. And that should be very helpful for our agricultural activities, our industrialization, our navigation, our aquaculture there in this long river. And, water level will also go up, having so much body of water in one river. So we point out that, and we said in the Delta plan that our Brahmaputra Jamuna river should be dredged. But there was opposition about that. Many say dredging, we may kill the river, not that at all. Actually, there is opposition also when we build actually bridges over the rivers. Of course, that actually create a hindrance for the river, for its movement. But if you do in a planned way and identifying the main channel, you have to ensure enough water, enough river should flow. River should allow flowing in its own way with all the water it requires to be flowing. So that we say Jamuna rivers actually spread over 14 to 16 kilometers in both sides during the dry season, having braided everywhere, so many shoals coming up. So this can, if river is dredged based on satellite imagery, identifying the main channel, and if you deep enough, so this will not die down, river will not die down, it will have enough space to flow. So that can be brought within 11 to 12 kilometers. So you can save 6 kilometers, and with dredged soil, you can create townships or industrial areas, or you can use this dredged soil to elsewhere for raising your lands. Anyway, recently, our High Court perhaps put injunction on that, saying that you cannot kill the rivers. So killing the rivers and managing the rivers is not same. So you can manage river if you allow enough room for rivers, that is enough to keep the rivers flowing. So in principle, that should be taken into consideration. Everywhere in the world, actually, we have so many barrages, we have so many embankments. Of course, embankment is encroachment, no doubt about that. But if it is a plan, if you do it planned way, then you can utilize your resource, water resource and river body for economic activities, for livelihood, for creating markets, for navigation. And we emphasize river and routes for goods transportation. It's the cheapest way and cleanest way for transportation. So just I am talking some points from my Delta Plan 2100. So these are the focuses in different areas, in different chapters. And we said and estimated if it is implemented as we suggested, 1.5% GDP growth will be accelerated or will be risen if we do that, if we can do that. So that's why I said, of course, I know many oppose cordon approach. I mean, creating amendment in its whole, you may create one, no, you may block river. But with planned dredging and keeping the room for river, that need to be understood carefully. Rivers must have room for water flowing. So of course we agree, rivers are living entity, no doubt about that. So if rivers we allow dying, our civilization will die, no doubt about that. So rivers must be kept alive. That must be taken granted. But we can, in a planned way, use river resource for our enrichment, for our development, for our for creating markets, for navigation. By navigation, we can allow, water passages for transportation. So anyway, what I should say, I would say as I quickly read out the topics in different sessions, it's quite interesting, and I think those are quite insightful and technical. So as you decided that Springer and what you call it, Shampa, they decided to go with publication of the proceedings. That will be very much encouraging. That need to be recorded, that to be well circulated, and I would also urge not only publication of that book, those who prepared technical articles, particularly from Bangladesh, I would request, I urge that you go with, writing popular articles in newspapers, creating awareness among the people, because many are not aware of the things going on with this management of natural resources. Many are not aware with how we are managing the rivers. So we need to make the civil society aware that how we can best utilize our best resources of the country, rivers and river waters. So popular articles sometimes many read, civil society people, they need to be, and even the policymakers, they need to know actually about the particular things. They need to be well discussed in the civil society, media, and amongst politicians, among the policymakers. So please, those who contributed here from Bangladesh, please go with publication of your articles in Bangla for mass use and consumption. So, and in the Bangla Delta Plan, we also emphasize development of basin-wide development of rivers. I mean, GMB, you heard it from the previous speaker, Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna basin. So we asked for basin-wide development. Not only a single country can handle international rivers. So we asked for going with basin-wide development of rivers. In this regard, actually, we have not, in the past, we have not had any big cooperation in this country. But I think for the sake of peoples of the Buddha countries or other countries, particularly those who are riverine countries like us, Nepal and others, even Myanmar, we can talk to them and go with, joint management of, or joint planning of, or joint utilization of the rivers need to be thought of. So I think I should stop here because I talked many things, as Delta Plan is a big one. So in a very sporadic way, I talked many issues. And I'm quite happy our Bangladesh created one big institution, big in a sense, important institution, I should say, Bangladesh River, what is that? Bangladesh National River Commission, Conservation Commission, who is assigned to keeping the rivers clean, pollution-free, and free from encroachment. This is a big problem in our country, encroachment, particularly water bodies, particularly, river areas in the Dhaka city, you will see how much we encroach the river areas. And river areas should be clearly, we must use them for our transportation, must use them for fresh water, clean water. There should not be any repugnant smell. You can't, walk in the evening or in the morning. So it's a great failure for our part in this country, I think. And still our four rivers around the Dhaka, greater Dhaka city, we fail to actually utilize them in their own way and in their own right. We actually yet fail to exploit the potential of our rivers. So in this sense, one big institutional development is we created our River Conservation Commission. I will urge they need to be fully manned, whatever required. They should be provided resources, and they should not only depend on other ministries for stopping encroachment. They should have their own manpower as much as possible. But cooperation be needed, no doubt, because all the ministries are involved in river and things or river management. So I would urge, please, many useful thing depends on our River Conservation Commission. Many rivers are encroached, many rivers are dying. Even in Boral River in Chalonville, even Land Ministry created the office which was once part of Boral River. So it's very interesting that government institutions also encroach. Because of negligence or because of unawareness, maybe. So that Boral River is a big river of the Chalonville, covering so many districts, 8 districts, 9 districts. Our richest ecosystem in Bangladesh. So in many areas, rivers are dying or not dressed every year, as we suggested in our Delta plan. Rivers should have capital dredging and mentioned dredging every year. And we started working on that since 2014-15, dredging in a massive way. That is one of the reasons we don't have very persisting long-term flooding in our country, because water can recede having dredged rivers. So that is good impact of our Delta plan implementation. As we said, all the rivers need to be dredged with a proper feasibility study, with maintenance dredging every year. So that is it all. I get the chance to say a few words on Bangladesh Delta plan. So I thank the organizers for allowing me to come here. And I really personally feel it's very important international seminar you hold, particularly in North-South University, one of the leading private sector university. And sometimes it seems that they are one of the university think tank in Bangladesh. So thank you very much for organizing this, and those who participated, and those who hear me here in my sporadic speeches. I thank you very much, and all the best to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for joining and sharing this special occasion with us. Now it's time to welcome today's session chair, Professor M. Ismail Hussain, Pro-Vice Chancellor of North-South University. I would kindly request him to address the audience. So.
Respected Chief Guest, Dr. Shamsul Alam, Honorable State Minister, Ministry of Planning, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Esteemed closing keynote paper presenter, Professor 𝒊𝒗𝒆𝒓𝒔, IIT, Guwahati, India. Distinguished participants in this international conference on rivers of South Asia, connecting ecology, people, and governance, organized by SIPG, University Darussalam, Brunei Darussalam, National River Commission, Conservation Commission, Bangladesh. Dear faculty members and my dear students, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my pleasure and honor to speak before this distinguished gathering where we have academics and researchers from Bangladesh, Brunei, India, Thailand, and United Kingdom. They have presented 23 papers, as I have come to know, on a range of issues, all under the thematic ideas, the people and ecology and governance. As we know from the presentation of our summary of keynote speaker, that the issues are very interesting and relevant, not only to Bangladesh, but the region as a whole. And finally, the closing keynote speaker have opened up to many of us, if not all, a new approach to the study of rivers of this region, which is very illuminating, very interesting. Maybe some of us at North-South University will become interested and pursue that line of research in the future. The key question, as our honorable member has mentioned, is how to manage rivers in Bangladesh. The rivers, our internal rivers or national rivers, and also the transboundary rivers, which is shared with Nepal, Bhutan, and India. And that question has been addressed, as he mentioned already, with the Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100. I think it devotes two different chapters. The huge volume discusses these issues in two different chapters and have presented a range of strategies in the volumes. Our takeaway from this seminar or conference, I believe, may be that the issues that have been discussed here and our researchers and academics from their research experience and long accumulated wisdom may have some recommendations which might be of interest for the planners in Bangladesh. Because Professor Samsulalom has always emphasized that this planning document, the Delta Plan document, is a living document, or it is for 100 years, so many things will change, many new things will emerge, many new things will come, many new ideas will come, and those ideas will be used in the coming years for the future development of Bangladesh. So I would also request our academics to find, after reading the Bangladesh Delta Plan, what inputs may be provided in the ongoing Bangladesh Delta Plan from the recommendations from this conference, international conference. Now, I like to mention something. You have noticed, and our planning minister has also pointed out, that our rivers are drying up because of siltation and low flow of water from upstream rivers. Incidentally, that might cause a havoc to our agriculture, fisheries, transportation, and cripple the economy. Yeah. But because of the enthusiasm of our people and policymakers and the government, we have been able to avoid that path, that havoc, by substituting other means. Okay, for example, we have little scope of irrigation from river water. Yeah, we have switched to underground water. Okay, we have decline in fish production from open water fisheries. So we have shifted from capture fisheries to culture fisheries. And our transportation system, boat-based transportation system, has come to a very significant amount now. And we have switched from river boats to motorized vehicle, road transport system. So these are the types of adjustments that Bangladesh has been able to make to keep the economy going and making progress. Okay, so congratulations to our Bangladeshi brothers and sisters and you. Okay, so I don't have much to say. I thank the organizers of this international conference and all the participants, distinguished participants who have joined this seminar and enlightened us with their wisdom. Okay, North South University is very proud of this seminar and you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable speech. I would now request Dr. Tawfiq Haq, Director SIPG, to offer the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Farin. Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon, evening. Just to give a very short kind of my one or two takeaway and then doing this formal part of the Thanksgiving. I think it was a fascinating seminar or conference for last 2 days. I have learned a lot. The first takeaway that I just want to share it with you is that probably all the sessions that we have covered from yesterday morning, it has proven that river management, river governance is now totally a multidisciplinary issue. So it's not only depending on engineers, it's not depending on policymakers, it's not only depending on politicians, it's not depending only on academicians. And also our first keynote speaker, Dr. 𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈 was as rightly mentioning that is a poetic to politics. So everything we need to look into it. So as our Honorable Chief Case also mentioning that the Delta Plan, and also he says, and it's actually is a living document. I'm sure there will be so many inputs can be given as our session chair suggesting that we can give for improving or adding for the long-term Delta Plan of things. So that's the thing that we need to see it from the multiple lenses and multidisciplinary way. Otherwise, lots of problems will be coming. Second takeaway for me that I think I got, and as a student of policy, that we need to talk about political economy of river governance because our rivers are grabbed. There are illegal encroachment, all these things are happening. And if you do not understand the political economic part of the whole river governance, especially in Bangladesh, will not be able to solve many of the challenges that our river issues are facing. And thirdly, that we need to talk and have more conferences like this because it is a little bit less discussed issue, river governance and the river management issue. I couldn't remember that when the last time an academic conference was happened on the river governance issue. So, but I'm sure that we'll do more in the coming days. And related with that, as our chief guest also was saying, that NRCC can really play a very important role. I also had a very few knowledge before this conference and organizing the structure of NRCC and the capability. I'm so impressed by seeing so many good researchers are working within NRCC. So I would request our policymakers and especially ministers sitting here that upgrade NRCC, empower NRCC, and give more autonomy to NRCC. That can be one way of seeing how better governance can be done. Without autonomy, without more empowerment and upgradation and resources, as you also suggested, this will not be happening because we have so many commissions, but not that functional. But we want to really see NRCC becomes a real functional commission with teeth. I again put the word again emphasis with teeth. Okay, so thank you again for all this part. And then just a follow-up thing that after the conference, what we have planned already, our NRCC friend said, we have 3 follow-up things. We are planning to have a special issue of a South Asian Journal of Policy and Governance that 𝑺𝒐𝒖𝒕𝒉 have, that with some of the papers we will be selecting. We'll definitely have an edited volume that we and Brunei University Social Science faculty, we agreed with again some selected papers from here, and will be published from an international publishing house. And we will be definitely, as 𝑺𝒐𝒖𝒕𝒉 always does, we will come up with policy brief for Bangladeshi, especially the policymakers, and those policy briefs we will be sharing. And our chief guest has suggested very important suggestion. We also need to come out with Bangla popular writing to make more awareness, because otherwise this will only be kept within the educated so-called PhD holders and academicians and technicians. We need to bring this knowledge also to the people. Finally, I would like to thank all the organizers, co-organizers of this conference, especially a special thank to Dr. 𝒔𝒊𝒏𝒈, who came out with this proposal initially as a second round of the conference. And I think we got all the helps, and also the participants also from Brunei University. We have other participants. Thanks all for coming and joining. Thanks to NRCC for giving all the supports in the last 2 days and also before. And also I would like to thank our NUC authorities to give us this opportunity to hold it here, and our Vice Chancellor, Pro-Vice Chancellor, and other deans and directors who participated here. I would like to just mention a few names of 𝑺𝒐𝒖𝒕𝒉 who did very hard work. A special thanks to Mr. Parvez, who was the main driving force for organizing it. Mr. Mahmood, looking after the IT issues, Rudmila, and also Farin. So finally, I thank all our guests, and especially the participants who came from India, different part of India. We had participants from Calcutta and Assam, and also from Delhi. And also lots of participants joined online, even from with China and other countries. And we had a very interactive discussions starting from Afghanistan to Nepal to Bhutan to Bangladesh and other part of the South Asia. So again, thank you all for this participation. And I hope that we will have another round of this type of international conference on river issue, probably another within 2 years of the time. Thank you for participating, and we are now inviting you to join a small tea and refreshments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would now request